Chapter 2. The Night Everything Changed. The Boy Scout campground nestled deep in Northern California's wilderness had been Mark Ferris's playground for the past week. He was 13, restless, and consumed by adventure. The kind of kid who wore every badge like a trophy, each one telling a story of survival, skill, or daring exploration. Tonight, though, there would be no merit badge for what he was about to experience. It was the last night before heading home, the final hours of camp life that had been spent hiking rugged trails, tying knots faster than any scout in the troop, and whispering ghost stories around the fire. Tales of spirits lurking beneath the towering redwoods, whispers of lost souls carried on the wind. But by 2 a.m., the camp was silent. The stars gleamed overhead, crystal clear against the untouched sky, the forest breathing in the stillness of the night. Until Mark woke. Something had pulled him from sleep, not fear, not discomfort, just the mundane call of nature. Sliding out of his tent without disturbing Jason or Ben, he tiptoed between the sleeping figures of his fellow scouts, past the smoldering embers of the campfire, and toward a dense bush far enough away for privacy. That was when he heard it. A hum, faint at first, woven into the whispers of the trees. Then it grew. Low, steady, not quite mechanical, but not entirely organic either, like a sound that didn't belong in this world. Mark froze. The forest wasn't supposed to hum. Then, before he could even breathe, the darkness ahead fractured. A light exploded through the foliage, surreal and impossible. A color that didn't exist in nature, shifting, bending, illuminating the world in hues that defied explanation. The shadows it cast weren't normal. They didn't stretch or distort as expected. They twisted, moving against the laws of physics, bending in directions that didn't make sense. Mark stood paralyzed, his heart hammering in his chest, his breath locked in his throat. Something was coming. Something was here, and it was watching him. The wilderness had never felt so unnatural, and whatever lay beyond those trees, it wasn't of this earth, not anymore, not ever. Chapter 3. The Choice That Changed Everything. Mark's pulse hammered in his ears, his breath still shallow from the shock of what he had seen. But instincts overrode fear. He had to tell someone. Dashing back to the tent, he shook Jason and Ben awake, voice urgent, words tumbling out in a frantic whisper. "You have to see this. There's something out there, something weird." Jason groaned, barely lifting his head, his voice slurred with exhaustion. "You're just seeing things." He rolled over, pulling his sleeping bag tight around him, already half asleep again. Ben, equally unimpressed, grunted, rubbing his face before mumbling, "Probably fireflies or something. Go back to bed." Mark stared at them, disbelief clawing at his thoughts. Fireflies? No. That wasn't what he saw. It wasn't natural, wasn't like anything that should have been in this forest. But their dismissal left him torn, his gut twisting with indecision. Go back to the tent? Forget it ever happened? Or investigate alone? His heart pounded with the weight of the choice. Then, in a single steady breath, he made up his mind. He was going back. And this time, he would see exactly what was waiting beyond those trees, even if it meant facing something he wasn't ready for. Even if it meant never seeing life the same way again. Because deep down he knew this moment would change everything, forever. And he had no idea what was coming next. Chapter 4. The Threshold Between Worlds. Mark's pulse thundered as he took a step forward, the flashlight in his shaking grip carving out shadows among the tangled roots and towering trees. The forest felt different now, as if the air itself was holding its breath, waiting, watching. Then, in the clearing ahead, it stood there. A shimmering elliptical portal, hovering just inches above the ground, pulsing in a rhythm that wasn't entirely natural, yet not wholly foreign either. Beside it, a metallic table, oddly placed, waiting, holding an open bag made of a strange, fibrous material, something neither fabric nor metal, its texture defying logic. Mark's breath hitched as he stepped closer. Inside the bag, a collection of devices, glowing softly, clicking, shifting. Tools that pulsed with unknown mechanics. Translucent crystals humming with quiet energy. Gears spinning with no visible connection to any motor. A toolbox, perhaps. Or something far more dangerous. His fingers twitched with temptation, the urge to touch, to understand, to uncover the mystery nearly overwhelming. But then, he remembered his phone. Rapidly, he pulled it out, snapping picture after picture, documenting everything. This was proof, undeniable, irrefutable. And yet, his eyes kept drifting. Back to the portal. That was the real discovery. Something about it called to him. An invisible pull, a force beyond comprehension. A stick lay near his feet. He grabbed it, heart pounding, and tentatively pressed it against the shimmering surface. No resistance. No reaction. It disappeared, vanished into whatever lay beyond that gateway. Mark swallowed hard, every rational thought screaming at him to walk away. But he was never one to ignore curiosity. Slowly, cautiously, he extended his hand, pressing his fingers forward, feeling nothing but cold air. Then, before he could second-guess his own recklessness, he leaned forward, pushing his head through. And what he saw stole every breath from his lungs. Beyond the portal, not trees, not the mountain, not Earth, but the inside of an alien spacecraft, its metallic corridors stretching infinitely in both directions, humming with power, with purpose, with presence. Something was here. Something had brought this portal to Earth. And now, it knew he was watching. Mark tried to pull back, but suddenly, the air shifted. The ship moved. And the portal flickered. Chapter 5. The Hall of Specimens. The corridor stretched endlessly before Mark, its walls alive with pulsing veins of light, refracting through surfaces that bent reflection in ways his brain struggled to process. The spaceship felt less like a construct and more like a living organism, humming with anticipation, breathing through unseen vents that carried a strange warmth across his skin. But it wasn't the floor that tilted under his feet, or the floating icons that blinked silently overhead that rooted Mark in place. It was the massive concave window at the corridor's midpoint, an open view into the impossible. There, suspended in absolute darkness, was Earth. Beautiful, silent, alone. Mark's breath hitched. The void beyond the ship's hull didn't feel like space. It felt like a warning. He gripped his phone tighter, resumed snapping photos, doing everything he could to capture what his instincts told him no one would ever believe. But that's when he saw them. The cages. Lined along both sides of the hallway were large, glowing enclosures, each one pulsing with a semi-transparent barrier that fluctuated like a heartbeat. Inside the cages were creatures, some familiar, many not. A deer, eyes wide and glassy with terror. A wolf, tense but still, sensing something Mark couldn't. A mountain lion, muscles coiled, its tail flicking anxiously. But the others. One hovered without wings, its spherical body covered in prismatic scales, slowly rotating mid-air. Another had long limbs of shifting transparency, like liquid glass molded into an animal that never stopped flowing. And then there was one shaped like a flower, but only until it blinked. Mark's mouth went dry. Was this a menagerie, a research vessel, or something worse? The locks and the warning drawn to the deer's panic, Mark stepped forward. He crouched beside the glowing lock, fingers grazing the smooth, seamless surface, symbols dancing and shifting as if they were reacting to his touch, but not in a way he could understand. "Come on," he whispered, pressing and swiping, hoping for intuition to guide him. Nothing. The symbols didn't align, didn't respond the way human tech did. It was like trying to solve a riddle in a language he had never heard spoken aloud. Then, the hum changed. The presence approaches, low, rhythmic, almost like a growl being exhaled through a metal lung. Mark froze. The deer pressed itself into the far corner of the cage, its body quivering with instinctive terror. The glowing barrier shimmered, dimming slightly, as if even the ship was afraid. The sound grew louder, closer, now accompanied by a wet clicking, like multiple joints bending in unison. Mark stepped away from the cage, his back flat against the wall, mind racing. He didn't understand the tech. He couldn't free the animals. And whatever was coming, it wasn't mechanical. It was alive. And it was hunting the halls again. He had seconds. Stay and hide, or run and risk it all. Because whatever built this ship had built those cages too. And Mark was very much outside of one. For now. But maybe not for long. Chapter 6. Between Worlds. Mark's heart plummeted as the voices grew louder. Not words exactly, but frequencies, guttural and thick, vibrating against the ship's walls like living sound waves. The figures were close now. He barely registered the details. Tall, their forms wrapped in glossy, obsidian suits, heads slightly elongated, faces obscured by smooth, featureless helmets. Their very presence bent the air around them, as though gravity itself yielded to their authority. Mark didn't wait to see more. He turned and ran, breath shallow, adrenaline giving wings to his legs. The corridor blurred around him as the portal's glow emerged ahead, still pulsing, still open. Thank God. With a final desperate leap, he threw himself through and landed hard on Earth's soil. The drop and the descent. He hit the table with a crash, knocking over the alien bag, its contents spilling and skittering like frightened insects across the dirt. The glowing devices blinked erratically, some whirring, others emitting faint pulses of energy. Two rolled down the hillside, swallowed by the underbrush. Mark scrambled to grab them, but his hands shook, and panic kept catching his breath in jagged bursts. The portal behind him flickered. He looked up. Deep red, then black. Not just dark. Absence. Like something ancient had reached through and turned off the stars. He froze. If they stepped through, if even one of them made it across, Earth wouldn't stand a chance. Mark grabbed the closest device, a small crystalline cylinder glowing blue from the inside out, and bolted, stumbling through brush and fallen branches until he collapsed behind a massive oak stump. The Watcher. The stump's bark pressed cold into his back, grounding him as his lungs gasped for air. His hands clawed at moss and leaves, trying to still the tremble in his fingertips. He peeked out and waited. For footsteps, for light, for anything. His instincts screamed to run, but something stronger held him there, the need to know. What were they? Why Earth? What did they want with animals? And with him? The night air pulsed with silence, heavy and unnatural, as the edge between worlds hung by a thread. And Mark, now clutching a piece of alien technology, knew he wasn't just a camper anymore. He was the first human to step onto their ship, and whatever followed him back wouldn't be far behind. Not now, not ever, and he was no longer the observer. He was part of the story. Chapter 7. Through Alien Eyes. Mark didn't breathe. He couldn't. From behind the bush, every heartbeat felt like a drumbeat in his ears, thunderous against the fragile hush of the forest. The moment the aliens had stepped through the portal, the world around them seemed to yield. Light dimmed subtly. Air pressure shifted, as if Earth itself recognized their presence as unnatural. The figures weren't simply visitors. They were anomaly incarnate. Motionless, they stood among the trees with an almost ceremonial stillness. The forest dared not whisper. The wind held back. And Mark watched. The anatomy of something unfathomable. Their skin, if it could be called that, was like a veil of living glass, translucent and impossibly smooth, revealing the glow of bioluminescent arteries beneath the surface. The light pulsed in slow, deliberate waves, moving like data, not blood. Their heads were crowned in a halo of tendrils, swaying as though reacting to frequencies Mark couldn't hear. Each one glowing faintly, subtle variations in tone between indigo and ultraviolet. The closest he could compare them to were deep-sea jellyfish, but more precise, more intentional, like living antennae decoding the universe. When one of the beings stepped closer to the overturned table, examining the dropped gizmos with careful precision, Mark's gaze drifted to its eyes. And those eyes, they weren't just shimmering. They were alive with thought. Shifting lenses within lenses, expanding and contracting like the iris of a camera made of quartz and starlight. There was intelligence behind them, depth and focus. Because in the next heartbeat, the taller figure tilted its head, turning slightly, slowly, until it faced the exact spot where Mark crouched. Its gaze didn't search. It rested, not aggressive, not hostile, just impossibly aware. Mark felt seen in a way that pierced beyond skin and bone. Like the creature understood everything, his age, his heart rate, his fear, even his thoughts. It didn't move forward. It didn't speak. But it didn't need to, because in that one eternal moment, Mark knew these weren't just scientists. They were sentinels. And now Earth was no longer observing the stars. The stars were observing back. Chapter 8. The Weight of a Choice. Mark's breath came shallow, his heartbeat hammering against his ribs as the alien figures continued their silent work, each movement eerily synchronized, each touch against the devices a calculated precision beyond human comprehension. Their suits rippled like fluid metal, shifting in response to their bodies, alive perhaps, or at least something beyond mere fabric. Armor? Life support? Or something deeper? Something symbiotic? The faint hum that radiated from them was too organic to be purely technological, blending so seamlessly with the surrounding forest that it was almost hypnotic. But Mark barely noticed anymore. He was trapped inside his own thoughts, spiraling toward a truth he had no way to escape. What if he had taken the picture? The weight of the moment crushed him. He had forgotten to document it. Had he wasted the discovery of a lifetime? Had he missed the chance to prove to the world that extraterrestrial life was real, tangible, standing right before him? Frustration flared, but something colder snuffed it out almost instantly. The questions that followed weren't about what he had missed. They were about what he might have triggered. Would the aliens have noticed the tiny click of the camera? Would their strange, ever-shifting eyes have turned toward him, recognizing the flash, the sudden exposure, the evidence? Would they have moved toward him, tendrils trembling with awareness, not with fear, but with interest? Would those clawed fingers, built for precision, have reached toward him instead of the devices? The horror that could have been. His mind unraveled scenarios too vivid to ignore. A translucent cage rising around him, locking him inside with the terrified deer, the eerie floating creatures, his own screams absorbed by whatever force muted sound within the ship. Or worse, a cold, sterile alien lab, where these beings, so deliberate, so calculating, tore apart human biology not out of cruelty, but out of scientific necessity. Would he be dissected, examined under flickering lights, reduced to just another specimen? Would those tendrils press against his skull, probing something deeper than flesh? His mind, his memory, his thoughts themselves? Mark squeezed his fists into the dirt beneath him, forcing himself back to reality. The silent watchers. One of the figures paused. Its gemstone-like eyes expanded, shifting in delicate layers, almost as if scanning, searching. Mark didn't move. He didn't breathe. He could feel the weight of its stare, feel the knowledge behind it, something deeper than mere curiosity. It wasn't looking for him. It was looking at him, through him. The hum grew softer, not fading, but shifting into something closer to thought than sound. And Mark realized, these creatures didn't just see. They understood. And whatever they were thinking about him would decide what happened next. The threshold between fear and fate. Mark remained frozen, his entire being teetering on the edge of fight or flight, but something kept him grounded, something beyond just fear. It was instinct, the pull of discovery, the need to know. The alien figures continued scanning, assessing, but now, Mark felt a subtle shift in the atmosphere. The hum beneath their rippling suits grew deeper, vibrating through the air like a distant storm approaching. And then, one of them moved. The turning point. With an eerie grace, the taller one tilted its head, its tendrils fanning outward in an intricate pattern, glowing violet, then indigo, then something darker. A moment later, it raised its clawed hand, fingers flexing in synchronized pulses, almost like it was testing the space around it, feeling, searching. Then the air tightened. It was like a shift in gravity, a pull towards something unseen, forcing Mark's body to remain unnaturally still. His breath hitched. And then, the creature turned fully toward him. The unspoken connection. Mark knew. He knew that it could see him, even though he remained perfectly hidden. It could sense his heartbeat, his every micro-movement, the electric signals running through his nervous system. His stomach twisted as the alien took one single step forward. Mark clutched the alien device he had taken from the bag, gripping it so tightly his fingers ached. The moment he did, something happened. A flash of light rippled across the device's surface, pulsing in rhythm with the tendrils of the alien before him. Like recognition, like communication. And in that instant, Mark understood. They weren't here for him. They were here for what he took. Mark swallowed hard, his mind racing through a million possibilities. Had he accidentally stolen something dangerous? Had he disrupted a mission, a plan, something far bigger than himself? Or had he just made the first move in something far more terrifying? A sudden pulse of energy crackled through the air, sending shockwaves through the forest as the alien raised its hand higher. The trees rustled violently, reacting as if the very fabric of reality was shifting. Mark's breath hitched. He had mere seconds to decide. Would he run? Would he return the device? Or would he stand his ground, refusing to break beneath the gaze of something beyond human comprehension? Because in the next heartbeat, everything was about to escalate, and nothing could stop it now.